Hey guys, CFAR here, and today I want to go over all of my settings for the upcoming ARK Survival Ascended series. Without further ado, let's get into it. So in the audio category, master volume has been decreased down to 75, and music volume has been decreased down to 25. The rest of the volumes have remained default. Heading over to video, motion blur, film grain, light bloom, and light shafts have all been turned off. The only one remaining on is color grading. In UI, I've went ahead and changed item slot scale up to 1.0 and crosshair size up to 1.0. The rest of this is pretty much all default except for Fahrenheit temperature. That has also been turned on. Finally, in the camera category, starting out in the audio category, master volume has been decreased down to 75 and music volume has been decreased down to 25. In the video category, motion blur, film grain, light bloom, and light shafts have all been turned off. Color grading is the only one that remains on. In the UI category, most of the items here have remained on default, except for UI item slot scale, which has been increased up to 1.0, and crosshair size, which has also been increased to 1.0. I've also went ahead and changed Fahrenheit temperature from off to on. In the camera category, everything here is currently at default. Once we get into gameplay, we can try some of the stuff out, but for right now, everything is set completely to default. Moving over to the advanced settings, most of this is set to default, except for wireless controller aim assist. I've went ahead and turned that off completely. I'm not familiar with it, and once we get into gameplay, we can try out this setting and see if it's something that I do like or I don't like, but for right now, it's completely turned off. With that being said, I've also went ahead and turned aim assist strength multiplier also completely down to 0. The rest of this remains default. So before jumping into the gameplay settings, the first thing I want to talk about is something that we've never had access to here on this channel, and honestly, it's probably one of the biggest selling points for ARK Survival Ascended on console, and that, of course, is the access to mods. Yes, guys, we are going to be using mods in this series, and I'm really excited to check these out. To start out, we're going to be using the Editions Ascended dinos, which include the Ceratosaurus, the Dinotherium, the Brachiosaurus, the Archelon, the Helicorprion, and finally the Xiphactinus, I think it's pronounced. Unfortunately, right now, the Deinosuchus is currently unavailable, but once it does become available, it will also be added to the series. So now jumping into game rules, everything in the player category is set to default at 1.0. Now in the creature category, everything here is set to default except for harvesting damage. This has been decreased from 3.2 down to 3.0. In the structure category, damage repair cooldown is set to 30 seconds as opposed to 180 seconds, and disable structure placement collision is turned on. Damage and resistance remain at default at 1.0. So checking out the world category, XP multiplier is decreased from 1.0 down to 0.25. Now, if you're not familiar with my playthroughs, I do like to do a staggered XP experience, where from levels 1 to level 25, we're going to be at 0.25 XP. From level 25 to level 50, we're going to be at 0.5 XP. From level 50 to level 75, we're going to be at 0.75 XP. And finally, level 75 and on, we're going to be at 1.0 XP. Taming speed multiplier has also been increased from 1.0 up to 0.50. Now, the rest of this is pretty much default, but I do want to go through them just for clarity. Allow speed leveling is set to default at off, and I plan on keeping it that way. Allow flyer speed leveling is also turned off. I plan to keep it that way. Maximum difficulty is turned on, and you do need to have this turned on to force the max creature level up to 150, regardless of the map. You also want to make sure your difficulty level is set to 1.0 if you are looking to get 150 dinos spawning on your map. PvE mode is turned off for right now. I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of on the fence about this if I do want PvE or PvP. Traditionally in the past, I've had this off until we have access to cryopods, then I turn PvE on, but we don't have access to cryopods yet, so I don't really know what I'm going to do with this, but for right now, it is turned off. Hardcore mode is turned off for plenty of reasons there, and finally, allow unlimited respecs is turned on. And finally, we have the rules category, and here pretty much everything is set to default, except for notify player join. For some reason on default, this is set to on, but again, this is a single player experience, so no need to have that on. I've also went ahead and turned off PvP Gamma. If you guys know, I'm not a fan of using Gamma. I think it makes the game look really washed out and it just doesn't look good. So I've went ahead and turned this off completely. I've also went ahead and turned off single player settings. I'm not a fan of this. I know a lot of people like this, but for my playthroughs, I never have single player settings turned on. Alright, now checking out the PvE category in the Advanced tab, I've went ahead and turned off Allow Tribe War and Tribe War Cancelled, because again, we are on single player, there's no need for this. I've went ahead and turned Cave Building on, and I've went ahead and turned on Non-Permanent Diseases. The rest of these are set at default. So for PvP, I've went ahead and turned on Override Structure Platform Prevention. This enables turrets and spikes to be built and operated on platform saddles, which we are on a single-player series, guys. I am going to have a little fun with this, so I decided to turn this on. I've also went ahead and decreased the zone structure damage from 6.0 down to 1. At some point, we may build in a cave and everything, and I don't want my structures taking additional damage to this, so I've went ahead and changed it down to 1.0, which is what normal structure damage is. Finally, I've went ahead and decreased the structure prevention resource radius from 1.0 down to 0.5, and this will allow more resources to basically respawn closer to our base. If you guys know me, I do like more of a PvE experience where a lot of stuff is just lush and green, and there's a lot of environment around me, essentially. So again, that's why I've went with 0.5 with this setting. So checking out the world category, I've went ahead and changed daytime speed from 1.0 down to 0.23. Now, if I've done my math right, that should give me about 3 hours of daylight per game day, and honestly, I do this because I prefer recording my episodes during daylight. So spoil time and item decomposition time, I've went ahead and increased these from 1.0 up to 2.5, and spoil time in particular, I always increase this a bit because of mutton. I feel like once you get your hands on mutton, it runs out before you get a chance to use it, so increasing this just a little bit allows you time to get back to base and cook it into lamb chops or use it for a potential tame that you're looking to get. It just gives you a little bit more breathing room, in my opinion. Now, with item decomposition time, this is when you throw stuff on the ground, how long it's on the ground for. 2.5 is honestly only 5 minutes, which it might just give you enough time to be able to realize, oh crap, I dropped something I didn't mean to, and it'll just give you enough time to be able to get back to those items and figure out which item you actually need. So again, that's why I've increased it up to 2.5. Now, with no resource radius around players and structures, I've decreased this from 1.0 down to 0.5. Again, this feeds into the PvE aspect that I like to do with my playthroughs, and essentially this just allows things to spawn closer to my base. This allows things to spawn closer to my character, being trees, rocks, vegetation, all that kind of stuff. I don't really like to ruin the area that I build my base around me. Resource respawn interval has been decreased from 1.0 down to 0.5. This is the scaling factor for the respawn rate of resource nodes, so like trees and rocks. Lower values cause the nodes to respawn more frequently. Again, all tying into the PvE playthrough. Now here comes the fun part, because of course, now we're going to go over breeding settings. And I'm going to let you guys know right away, I have not tested these settings out, so I do not know if they're going to work or not, but here goes nothing. Mating interval is set to the lowest that it can physically go, is 0.01. Egg hatch speed is set to 5. Baby mature speed is set to 10. And baby cuddle interval is set to 0.25. How did I come up with the 5, the 10, and the 0.25? Well, I went to choose difficulty, made sure it was set on hard, and these are the default settings. So honestly, I have no idea if this is going to work or not. We'll figure it out in due time. Now, for the wild dino settings, the tame dino settings, the player settings, and the XP multipliers, all this is set to default at 1.0. I don't really touch any of this stuff. But finally, we have the Miscellaneous category, which we have made a couple changes here. Passive defenses hurt riderless dinos. Right now, I do have this turned off. I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of on the fence about this. This basically enables spike walls to damage wild and riderless creatures. And again, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about it. Maybe we'll go ahead and change this in the future, but for right now, it is turned off. I've also turned on Allow Raid Dino Feeding. This is if we eventually tame a Titanosaur. Traditionally, with a Titanosaur, it will eventually die. I think it lasts about 30 minutes to an hour. With Allow Raid Dino Feeding, we can continuously feed this thing in order to keep it alive. And again, we are on single player, so if I do tame a Titanosaur, I want to be able to keep it for as long as I want it. So the next setting I went ahead and changed is Platform Structure Limit, which I've increased this from 1 to 5. This is the scaling factor for the limit of structures that can be placed on a platform. Now, this is especially useful, especially if we're looking to do a taming raft at some point, or maybe we're going to do a raft base at some point. I want to make sure that I don't have limitations on the amount of structures I can add to said raft. And finally, last but not least, show floating damage text. I personally really like to have this on. This enables an RPG-style pop-up text to appear, displaying damage numbers. And for me, it's good to know. I like knowing how much damage my creatures are doing, or even how much damage I'm doing to a creature. So guys, those are my settings for the upcoming ARK Survival Ascended series. One thing I do want to mention is before you click that single player button, make sure you've went ahead and saved your settings. But guys, that is going to wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, take a second, make sure to smash that like button. On top of that, if you guys are excited for the brand new ARK Survival Ascended series, because I certainly am, take a second, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out. But guys, that's going to wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.